Hi, this is Tony Davis here at Areys Pond Boat Yard, and today we're going to rig an Areys Pond 14-foot catboat, and we're just going to go over the mast stepping and how to lay out the halyards to keep it short and simple. First, we want to talk about things that we need to have at the site before starting the process. First, we want to make sure we get our bag of tools, and in particular we want a mallet, screwdrivers, and pliers or vice grips, and a roll of friction tape to do any seizing or mousing or protection from cotter pins chafing. If we were down rigging and putting it away for the winter, we would want tags with zip locks that we can put on the halyards to mark them, what they are: throat, peak, and topping lift. We'll get into that more in a minute. So the point of this is to try to help people who are doing the rigging in the spring to be able to view this video and our owner's manual and have it go smoothly. Having done over 500 catboat rigs, it's easy, but we understand when it's the first or second or even the 10th time, it can be confusing. So first, we'll start before stepping the mast, and the process that we use to do that. We'll go over the halyards to make sure everything is in place. Okay, so we're going to start at the head of the mast. There's a possibility you have a flag halyard pennant, so that's going to be a small cheek block, and that's permanent to the mast, but you want to make sure that the halyard is in place that hoists up the pig stick, we call it, that has the flag on it. But you don't need to worry about the pig stick, you just need to worry that the halyard is in place. The next fitting is the peak halyard top block, and it is in place and is properly shackled. You could take another step and put a mouse on the shackle so it won't back out. The next fitting, which is the port, is the topping lift cheek block. As it runs up, it comes through the gaff and back up to the top one and then down to the deck. So again, same block, same line, and it's secured by a shackle. And then in the case of these carbon masts, the next fitting is the head stay, and that is fastened to support around the eye bolt. We don't put a chain plate in. Some of you might have a chain plate with a head stay fastened to that, and those are typically in the wooden masts, because in the carbon masts we try to put as few holes through the carbon as possible. So this is a swedge fitting going around the mast and supported by the second eye bolt. Moving down, our next fitting is the throat halyard eye bolt, and this eye bolt is running up and down, horizontal, and the throat halyard block is attached. The difference between the throat halyard block and the peak halyard block, the throat halyard block has a becket where the throat halyard is back spliced into, and this is where the lead starts. It goes from here down to a standard block attached to the throat, then back up through the running part of this block and down to the deck. And lastly, some of you may have, some of you may not, but this boat has lazy jacks, and we don't need the full line. We just need we don't need the full line that creates the actual lazy jacks, but we need the leads to be in place coming off the mast, port or starboard and port. Okay, moving down to the base of the mast. We're getting close to stepping it, but before we do, we just want to make sure that these halyards that we talked about up there are all bundled securely. And I just took some rigging tape and secured the halyards so they wouldn't all take off on me in different directions when I raised it. And when I de-rigged it in the fall, this is how I stored it in the garage or in some protected area out of the weather, with all the halyards all bundled separately. We'll go over the attachment points after the mast is stepped. So the last couple things we want to check before stepping, and it's not uncommon to forget, you might have taken the mast hoops off and varnished them over the winter, so don't forget to put the hoops on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is the time, or in the fall is the time to inspect them to make sure there are no breaks in them, missing hardware, or any serious wear and tear, because over the winter is the time to replace them so you can start off in the spring with fresh, solid mast hoops. The last fitting is the gooseneck. This is our newest model of our gooseneck. There's 2 different versions, but in any case the gooseneck needs to be secured to the mast, whether it's by screws or by this clamping system, and we inspect the hardware to make sure it's all in good shape. And then lastly, the tenon on the base of the mast is secure and in place. Alright, so now we've gone over all our fittings and we're ready to step the mast. This is the carbon fiber mast. It weighs about 12 pounds, so we can do it. I can do it on my own without any assistance. If it's the wooden mast, it's more like 50 pounds, and it's a good idea to have an extra hand to help you lift it up and over and in. So the 2 things we need is the setup for the horses, like we have here with a stool and a step here. So we're going to take the step so we have it to get up on board. And we're going to take the mast and grab it a little above the middle point and walk it up. And I'm going to place it right next to the mast partner. Mast partner is the hole that the mast goes in. So I have it standing right vertical with the mast partner. Keep my right hand on the mast. If you're left-handed, you might be doing this on the other side. And then it's up, maybe a little better step ladder. Now I'm up in the top third of the mast, and a lot of different ways to do this. This is we think is the best way. It's just straight up, over and in. So when you're doing it by yourself, there's this little tricky spot trying to find the tenon, but with patience, she will drop in. I'll probably have to edit this when I do that. So now she's in, the tenon's locked in, the mast is safe. You can let your hands go, it's not going anywhere. Before we put the wedges in, we want to attach the headstay because everything is loose. And then we don't have to readjust the headstay. So we're going to start undoing the wrapping we did, free up our halyards. I'm going to step back down. So, clevis pin. Attach the cotter pin. Some people will wrap tape around to protect chafe around the pin. Don't have to do it. So, good time to put the wedges in. Start with the forward one, push back, set it in place. And then we want to center the mast into partners. So we put our thwart chip ones in so they're even. And then our mast is in the center. And we also want the mast plumb, 90 degrees to the water line. This is a level line. And we want the mast, eyeball is fine. You don't have to, if you're real fussy, you put a level on the here and then a level on the mast. But eyeballing it is fine. And then the wedges go in after that evenly all the way around. There should be 8 of them, and they all tunk together neatly with a mallet. I'm not going to bang these in solid now, but we would bang them in so they're really, really solid and tight. Next thing is to say hi to these folks. So now it's time to attach the gooseneck and attach our halyards, and we'll be ready to launch the boat and go sailing. So I'm going to take this one step at a time, but it's all going to be kind of a fluid process, starting with the throat, then the peak, and the topping lift. So stepping aboard, we'll get the gooseneck in place. Raise up our hoops to give us room. Gooseneck drops in. And some of you will have a washer that'll go on, and then a cotter pin. It goes in. It keeps the gooseneck from coming out. This is something you want to check during the season, especially after a lot of hard sails, to make sure that pin is in place and not wearing. Okay, then we attach the mast hoops, and we take the male that's attached to the sail, and we line it up with the female, and we go in from the top, and it slides right in and rolls over and locks in place. These are the traditional bronze mast hoop attachments. Some of you may have seizing, some of you may have shackles, but in any case, now's the time to attach the sail before we pull on the outhauls. Then we attach the peril beads. Okay, this is really important to remember, that the peril beads don't come tight like that. We want a necklace. We want a nice necklace, like it was hanging around your neck. So when we peak up, there's still plenty of play in these peril beads. If they were tight and we peaked up tight to go to windward, we could snap the gaff jaw. So these have to be loose and hanging down. Their only purpose is to just, when you're raising and lowering the sail, so that the gaff doesn't come off the mast. Alright, so we're connected on the front end. Now we can run our halyards. start with the throat halyard. We've undone our bundle. It looks like a whole bunch of spaghetti up there, but everything's been organized in the fall. And so we'll start, we don't unbundle them all at once, it'll just get more of a mess. We just want to do one at a time. So we start with the throat. So most of them have a shackle attachment. This happens to have a screw attachment. So we screw this in. Tight. And then we run our throat halyard. I've got to flip this. I got a little twist in it. So we want to make sure we got a good fair lead. One more twist. And I'll tighten that up again. Alright. I'm going to see this all the way through. Again, just to eliminate line. The throat halyard goes on through the inner block and runs aft. Some of the newer boats, the halyards run through the deck and under. Same idea, these are just on top and over to the inboard cleat. Okay. Our next halyard is the peak halyard. And we've got to take a minute and just take a look up the masts and sort them out. The very top block, the lead off the top, is in this case, might have a snap shackle. Typically, on the newer boats, it's a bowline. And it gets tied off at the end of the gaff. So, again, second attachment is on the gaff bridle. Want to make sure there are no twists. Attach it. Over the years, the boats have different hardware for this attachment, but typically it's just one shackle. This has two shackles. And then from there we go forward and get the lines from the second block that we talked about in the beginning. And that's our halyard line that leads to the deck. Now we have a nice clean run going from the end of the gaff up to that top block, down to the bridle. So we've run the throat and the peak, and now we want to do the topping lift. The topping lift is our only line aloft that's on the port side. Topping lift attaches to the end of the boom. In this case, there's a clip. On the newer boats, there is a bowline knot. We don't use clips on the newer boats because we find that they can come undone accidentally when the wind's whipping around. Some 14-footers, I think the Compass and a couple of others may not have topping lifts, but all of the Areys Pond catboats have topping lifts. The reason for the topping lift is to prevent the boom from coming down and hitting someone in the head or hitting the coaming as you're raising the sail. So we run it through the only block to port and back to the aft cleat. That's only to port inside the coaming. Again, if it's one of the newer boats, it'll go through the deck and under. So the last thing, well, second to last thing, are the lazy jacks. So remember we talked about making sure they were secure in place up there, the legs. So the legs come down to deck level. And we have the remainder of the lazy jacks been stored in the boat or somewhere over the winter with that tag on it we talked about saying lazy jacks. So we take one end and we find a pad eye on the boom and we run it through, and the starboard side comes up outside all the halyards, goes through the starboard leg, pull some through, then we come over to the port side and we grab the port leg, come through with the opposite end of the long line, Wolfie is barking at Captain Ron, and then we run aft till we find another pad eye, and we come through the starboard leg, through. There's a lot extra line here. We give you plenty of line so it's slack when you're sailing. We don't want it pinching the sail and putting a crease in the sail. You put a rolling hitch in once, twice, and a half hitch on top. This is small boat lazy jack system, not 25-foot catboat system. This allows you to, on the rolling hitch, you can adjust the tension by sliding the rolling hitch one way or the other. So, our main sheet was hooked up when we put the sail on. It's in place. And secure the sail with a sail tie. And then we secure our flag halyard. It's getting a little dark here, so we're not going to raise our sail flag tonight. But we make sure it's in place. Typically it'll come down, you tie it off to the turnbuckle. In this case it's another rolling hitch. Some people put wire tie cleats you can get from boat stores and put a cleat on there. We like to keep it clear of the mast so that mast hoops and jaws don't get caught in it. We like the flags here at Areys Pond because it prevents the birds from landing on the mast, and it has a nice look, traditional look. So that's the end of the lesson on how to rig a 14-foot catboat, from stepping the mast to setting the halyards. And the next lesson will be on installing the sail and setting the sail and launching the boat. Enjoy.